Hi, this is Tony Wade, the Compassionate Investor, and we are talking about transitional housing. Now, it's important to understand how to find a specific niche that you like. And once you find that niche, you run with it. And I will tell you, I have a very fine-tuned niche, but I do all three. First, because you could work in transitional housing, you could work with agencies. That's one of my favorites because as you create relationships with agencies, you're getting them in position to where they're working with you, you're building a relationship, they're sending you their clients and you're working with them. I like that one. But I also like working with those who need to stay in recovery. And a lot of my model, I have that in there regardless, because we will have a drug-free, alcohol-free environment because people who are coming are all dealing with different things. So I like to make sure that I'm doing that, but you can specifically have just that niche where it's just recovery. And then you can work with probation and parole. I've been doing that pretty much since we started, sometimes by accident, because a lot of people we get were justice involved individuals, so we had to work with them. So we start building relationships with POs, with various different organizations, the Department of Corrections. We have contracts with them for housing. So all those type of things are the things that we do. So I could give you more information on that at any point. Just give me some comments. Reach out to me at tonytwade.com so that I can guide you down that path and we can get some things in place for you. But as you're thinking about that, it's important that you think about how can you first select the best property, because selecting the property is critical. You do not want to select a property that is going to be something that's not going to serve you. So you do have to consider the neighborhood. There's some areas I stay completely away from because no one's going to live there. So just because you find a property that's cheap and someone gave it to you or you bought it for $20,000 and you're going to put it together, doesn't mean that this is going to work. So you have to be able to choose the best property. And you also have to know the neighborhood that you're going into. You could be going into a neighborhood that has additional restrictions on you because it's the neighborhood restrictions. They're not going to let you come in there and put that up over there. No, they're not. So you need to know what type of things to look for or how to mitigate that. And then you need to consider the type of property that you want to get. Because there's three basic types that you can choose from, which would be the single family residence. You could choose a duplex or you could choose a fourplex or more. Because a multifamily that's bigger than a duplex, we're talking about truly being able to maximize rents, but you also have to take into account the overhead and making sure that it's a nice balance. Personally, my sweet spots are duplexes because they are the ones that allow me to do the most, but there are some fourplexes, because I have two, that I am able to maximize. So it all depends on when you go in and assess it, you can determine if it's going to be a good property for you or not. And let's talk about actually how you do that. And I like to refer to it as how you can maximize your rents. So at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, you really want to make money, but you also want to help people, right? So when I go into a property, my goal is to figure out how much can we make in that property. So the size of the property does matter. So as I told you, my sweet spots are duplexes, because in a duplex, I can get 3 or more individuals in there, and depending on how I've got it zoned and permitted, you could put sometimes 4, and I like 4. 4 is comfortable when you've got 1 bathroom. So when you're looking at a property that has that size, that is good. Also, when you're looking at, and that's the number. So we'll talk through the numbers in just a minute. I just want you to understand how you first can think about maximizing, because you have to look at the property itself, you have to look at the number of rooms and the neighborhood, because all of that determines what you're going to be able to do in that property, and you have to sort of juggle it all to make sure it makes sense. The best example I can give you is this. I have a single family property in an area that is and has restrictions from the neighborhood standpoint. They're not having any of that stuff in their property, right? So I could actually get 5 out of that I could even get it done through the plat and petition, which is another conversation we'll have too. But I'm not going to do the plat and petition in that area because of the neighborhood that it is in. It's still a neighborhood we still actively have a lot of our guests that stay there, but it's hard to do the plat and petition in this particular neighborhood. So long story short, there were a lot of things I had to juggle in my head to consider. Is that a good property or not? Yeah, it has 5. So we could get $2,500 a month off that property minus our overhead. And our overheads on single families are about no more than $1,000. Sometimes it's less than that because it's a single family. It just depends on the property. So you're already looking at getting some good rents from that property, but the neighborhood didn't really allow it. So those are things you have to think about because of the plat and petition. You think about the neighborhood. You think about the size of the property. It wasn't really the best fit for maximizing. So to be honest with you, I only keep 3 people in that property, even though there's 5. And you're like, what? Tony, you're losing money? I don't look at it like that. I mean, there are some balances to this, but those are things that you have to think about when you're getting into a property. So hindsight, that was one of my first earlier properties. We work with what we work with there, but the way I maximize rents there, because I have contracts. So I have contracts that'll pay me more than what I would typically get that allow me to maximize it to the fullest. I know that was a lot to say in a mouthful right there, but I will say if you want more information on how you can do that, I will be more than happy to share that information with you. Just go to TonyTWade.com or give me some comments and we'll be able to go from there. Now, the last thing I want to share with you is talking specifically about how you run the numbers and basically determining what your return on that investment is. So I'm going to say this really fast, so catch this. I hope you take notes on this, all right? So when I'm looking at a property, and let's just say my basic property I told you is $4,000, okay? So we're getting $4,000 a month. On my duplexes, my overhead is about $1,000. So you take $1,000 off, that leaves me at $3,000. I multiply that by 12. That's $36,000 that I received from that property. I take that and I divide it by what I purchased the property for. So let's say I purchased the property for $215,000, let's just say. And I use that number because later on you'll see I'm purchasing a property right now, even in a market as crazy as this, because my returns are usually a lot higher. But even in a property as high as this, the returns are crazy. And that's what I'm getting ready to show you in this model. So you divide that by the $215,000, and I take that number and multiply it by 100. I'm at a 16.7% return on my investment. And what that means to me is in about 6 years, I'll get that investment back. Okay, did y'all follow that? That's amazing. Like, who gets that type of return? Now I'm gonna say, even in this market where the markets are really high and you're paying more for properties than you typically would, that's how I go into this market and be able to assess whether I've got a good return or not. Now I'm gonna share this nugget with you because in a market where it's not as high as this, I've had returns at 136%. Like, I would get a return on my investment the same year that I purchased it. Is that crazy or what? But those are the type of things that I think about all the time. So I really like to be where I'm at least getting a return in less than 4 years. I'm really good at that. I like it when I can get at least all my money back that I paid for it back in less than 4 years. And that's a nice sweet spot. But guess what? 6 is good too. Because most people getting properties that they're renting are seeing 10 plus years, longer than that. I'm gonna have to run those numbers for you again so we can see what that looks like maybe in another episode. So this is some good information. I hope you took some good notes and I'll be back to you in a moment.